Namaste. Today's session of Fill the Peace is a special session. We just finished our housewarming, Griha Pravesham at our new home, Ramana Saraswati Nivas, last week. So we are very excited about that. So Fill with Peace has a place now. And, it's very beautiful to know that you have a very specific path and work entering the home. And Anant did his first short lesson with Ujjwal yesterday, who's also a key player in this whole process. So we are very happy that that's all starting off. So what I want to do today is to focus on a process and also to invite everyone to join me for making some plans for the upcoming month. We actually started this 100-day lab on April 28th, and we were in Tiruvannamalai at that time, and a lot of things came together. Everything actually took shape like this. So it is rather than a bunch of ideas, it came together in a certain way where we see peace as the foundation, it's the base. And when you have that peace, everything else falls into place: the daily rhythms, the family fun and learning, and joyful investigations. So that is how we see this tetrahedron: peace. Then one of the sides is daily rhythms, family fun and learning, and joyful investigations. Now, the place I want to focus on today is joyful investigations, because we can't fix daily rhythms overnight, and family fun and learning is more spontaneous. It evolves over time. And peace also is something that's going to take shape over time. So we're going to focus on joyful investigations. And I know that Gitanjali she connected to that term and she liked that idea, because we do have to start with something specific. So what specific thing can we start with? And most of you here have been part of the RAISE class. I think that's actually a very good starting point, because Ramana Art Form Interventions for Self-Awareness and Excellence, RAISE, that's been in schools for a long time. So it is not just arts, it is arts, but it's also already structured in a way to teach concepts. So you've seen songs like animal song, tree song, fruit song. So we know how to use theater activities to teach concepts, which is a very big part of education. So RAISE is a great place to start. It's also a great place to start because it's based on theater arts for holistic development and uses the 5 tools of theater. So you have movement and dance, music and rhythm, storytelling, arts and crafts, and you have the drama. So these 5 tools can be used creatively in many ways to teach children. So this is the idea behind TAHD, that theater tools are a way to support holistic development. And I'm actually doing my certification under Dr. Ambika Kameshwar, and I'm on level 2. And this work that I'm doing, Fill with Peace, is going to be my project for TAHD. We are also going to be publishing an ebook, and the first ebook is scheduled to come out in June. So I want to actually share some of what's going to be in that ebook. So this is sort of the model in the ebook, with peace at the base, the daily rhythms, the family fun and learning, and joyful investigations. So one of the joyful investigations examples could be you decide to take some song like animal song or body part song, and you decide to do it for a whole month. And so the first question I'll invite all of you to think about is, do you have some ideas for what you would like to work on for a month? Something that you can spend 10 minutes with your child every day consistently. So based on what you've experienced, for example, many of you like Dawn is Rising song. So if you like the Dawn is Rising song, that could be a project for a month. If you like the body part song, that could be a project for the month. So I'll just quickly invite you to share some idea that you have for a project that could work for a month. Gitanjali, Neetu, Muthukumari. Suchita, Bharti, anyone? And it can be a parent project too.
Ma'am, I was thinking like it's only 10-minute activity, then we can start with meditation because
Huh?
both myself and me, we both are always anxious.
Ah,
And
okay.
if another activity, I will take a song, maybe animal song,
Mhm.
and my concentration would be on building attention, mind body connect and presence.
Excellent. So I think we also need to think about what we would like to accomplish through that activity. So no rush. Like you said, if you take the animal song, just that one song, you can easily do it for a month because you can take it very incrementally, do line by line. Maybe you just do the first line or two on the first day. Maybe that's all you do. The idea is, like you said, to build attention. So right now when we do actually we do a lot of breaking up. He's preparing for his Anand is preparing for his Pranimitra Day presentation where he's doing a dance, but trying to learn everything at once is difficult. So we have sometimes when he's tired, we just focus on sitting down and working on the hand gestures and the movements, right? So there's a lot in the animal song. There is the singing, so you could just sit down for a couple of minutes and sing a couple of lines together. You can sing and do the movements and see what the child does. So there are many, many different ways of doing it. You can also set the stage for it by maybe pointing to animal pictures. There are many other activities you can do also to set the stage for that. So for example, when we did the fruit song with my grandson, we would sing the song, and then actual fruits were there on the table, so we would you know use those fruits and maybe even sing. So if you see an orange, actually the fruit song video that we have has it like that because they actually use the fruits when they're singing about it. So there are a lot of different ways in which you can do it, but my main suggestion is don't rush. So take one song, and I think Sujita had also mentioned this point. There's no rush. Take one thing and try to stay with it for a while. Do it little by little. And I just see that Manju joined, and Lavanya is really good about this. She will take one activity and really learn it, do a video, and then move on to the
I, I
next thing.
would I would really love to continue mandala, though we are doing
Yes.
mandala since 1 month plus.
Mhm.
But I would really love to continue because I could see there's a lot of pattern recognition, lot
Yes.
of fine motor control, and lot of visual perception thing. So
Yes.
I'm really observing that Ira is actually trying to figure out the complex visual perception, though it's still
Yes.
not apt. Like we have moved from very simple mandala to little big mandalas. That's a market book. Earlier, I was creating extremely simple mandalas with compass, and I was giving it to her. Now we have moved to little market wala complex mandalas, and she's trying to do that. But right now, we are doing it till our last one-to-one class. You told do something together, so that helps in co-regulation. So we
Yes.
are doing it together, but I would like to continue with mandala. Like I would like to explore that.
You brought up a good point, Suchita, about co-regulation. That is actually going to be a focus for the upcoming month because I think we want to really focus on that co-regulation. When we started relationship development intervention, that was probably the biggest thing I learned from there. And co-regulation means you are doing something with your child. And some simple ideas for getting started is to come up with a simple activity. So, for example, when my grandson came, and just continuing with the mandala example, I just took a mandala and I gave him one, a brush pen. I took one brush pen and I said, Ishan, I'm going to color here. And he took his pen and he said, I'm going to color here. And then very quickly he took out one more pen for each of us and he said, Party, you use these two pens, I'll use these two pens. And then we took turns. I would color some area, but no pressure, no saying this is what you need to color or anything. He'll color in one place, I'll color in one place. And however it worked was fine. So this is a basic co-regulatory pattern. So you take something like mandala, which is a very complex, coloring a whole mandala could be very complex. But Suchita, one of the things I'd encourage you to do is to think in terms of a simple co-regulatory pattern like that. So just take two markers, I do one, you do one. Because our children often may have, they may understand big concepts, but sometimes they don't have that basic back and forth language, which for my grandson was very easy. Oh, I'll take this one, you take this one. Now you color party, now I'll color. That type of language they sometimes have trouble with. So one of the things I would do is just take any activity, but simplify it to a co-regulatory pattern. And that co-regulatory pattern, this could be like a one after the other. I do one, then you do one. That was the pattern we used. It is not really imitation because he also knows how to color. I also know how to color. So it's not like he's learning from me. He's coloring, I'm coloring. But it's very flexible. The more of the goal is to have that turn taking structure. You can have parallel things. Like suppose you're sitting down and folding the clothes. You take one piece of clothing and you fold it, and he takes another piece and he folds it. That could be doing it together. So you can have the together or a one after the other type of a structure. So one thing I would suggest Suchita, is to think about a co-regulatory pattern and think about a role. So the role could be, for example, if you're just doing something very simple like hanging up clothes, the child picks up an item of clothing and you hang it up. The child picks up an item of clothing, you hang it up. That's a simple pattern. His role is to pick up the piece of clothing. Your role is to hang it up. So one of the things I'd really like you to pay attention to is establishing a pattern. So this is one of the earliest things we learned in RDI. And if you ask me, the single most impactful thing from RDI was this patterns and variations. So patterns give you that predictability and variations give novelty. A lot of the neurotypical children like novelty. They love things to keep changing, but our children may resist it. And in fact, if the child is anxious and not wanting to participate, it may be because they're needing that regulation, right? So I wouldn't hurry. We used to walk a lot. We've been walking together for the last 20 plus years. And when we walk, we'll generally have the same route, for example, pretty much similar every day. So that gives a regulatory pattern. And when we started RDI, we started doing slow variations. So it could be that we are walking and I'll suddenly stop. Now, when I suddenly stop, what happens to presence? Now, if you're just walking, it becomes very like he's not paying any attention, right? I'm walking, he's walking. But the moment I stop, the presence shifts. Now he has to pay attention. What is my mother doing now? So when I stop, he will notice and maybe he moves a few steps ahead because he hasn't yet processed that I've stopped. So we are walking. I suddenly stop. Now he's paying attention to what I'm doing, which is engagement, observation, right? He's seeing what I'm doing. And then he stops. Now, why is the level of activation low? Because I'm not doing too many things at the same time. The only little change I've made, we go on the same route every day. Maybe we've been going on the same route for 2 months. The only tiny change I've made is now I've suddenly stopped. So he knows there is some slight change. This is what in RDI they call the just noticeable difference. So there's a very tiny change, but now it makes him, he has to stop and think, what am I doing? So he stops. Then slowly we add more variations. I suddenly start walking backwards, or I suddenly start, going fast or slow. Lot of little variations you can introduce just on a walk. Now, what do variations do? They make it a little bit more interesting, right? He's also more attentive, right? Because he's like, okay, what might Amma do next, right? Otherwise, it becomes mechanical. We are just doing the same thing again and again and again. So once you have the pattern going, then you want to slowly introduce those variations. If you really work with patterns and variations, patterns and variations, patterns and variations, that's a wonderful way to teach our children. This is what we've experienced. This is where Anant really learned to handle novelty. We had the Grah Pravesim yesterday. You can imagine, so many people coming. We don't know what's going to happen. The puja is going on. The guests are coming. Food is going to be served somewhere. So much novelty is there, right? It's not a daily occurrence at all. And then on top of it, there's the sensory input. There's so many people around. All this is there. How do you get children ready for that? The seed for that was planted with RDI over 20 years ago. when we were very deliberate about patterns, variation, patterns, variation. So that is really what I want you to focus on for the next month. So, because when you say co-regulation, it's very broad. It's a very broad topic. So let us really narrow it down to, as a guide, you establish a predictable pattern. So if you take something like animal song, so Gitanjali, any ideas on how we could make that predictable? Let us say you want to do the animal song next month. Or anyone else. If you want to make some
Ma'am,
activity.
it would be mainly on repetition. How many times I'm repeating, especially following slow down.
Yes,
I will slow down as much as I can because yeah, goal itself is attention and
yes,
connecting to the rhythm.
yes. And so if you do that, repetition is key, right?
Huh.
To establish a regulatory pattern, you need repetition. But also you can make it more consistent. So, for example, every day morning, we get up and go to RMCL. Nowadays we started doing that uh, you know natya practice before we go on a walk, and even within that natya practice we have a uh, pattern. That is, we will start with usually the dance. He'll do dance for 10-15 minutes, then we'll sing together. So we actually have a pattern across. So think of patterns at different levels. You can have a pattern within an activity. So for example, if Suchita is doing the mandala, she can have a pattern within that activity. We don't leave all these pencils and so many things strewn around. So we just take out 2 pens and keep it to really establish that pattern. And we just practice. I take one and you take one and you color. I take one, you take one, you color. You just keep repeating that. So Suchita, this is something to maybe experiment with. Uh, Take only one color each. Don't keep too many things in front of you, and just take turns coloring. So that regulatory pattern is established. That pattern,
So,
the pattern, yeah,
sure,
go ahead.
ma'am, I'll try
Go ahead.
that.
So the pattern may not be
Uh,
established in one trial, right? So only when you repeat it, the child becomes now aware. Oh, every time we start the mandala, I am going to take one color, you'll take one color. Muthukumari, you had a question?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Actually, Ritesh, actually, if I want to follow one particular activity throughout a month, I think Ritesh will not take it up because he expects changes. Okay, so throughout the month, I keep on making him practice only one song. Okay, then will start resisting. He will say, "No, I don't want this." He will not come. He will say, "I don't want to sing. I don't want to dance." So,
See,
what about like if I take multiple things like means now for Dawn is Rising, already he knows how to sing, know the full song. Okay, what about incorporating it in the keyboard?
yes,
And then one activity is that one, and the
yeah,
other one is mandala. Like I think because once a school starts, he will be going to school, he'll be listening to so many things from the teacher and come home again. I talk to him, I teach him, make him do something. So lot of input will be
yeah,
like speech input will be going into his mind.
yes,
So what I want is like I want less instruction to be given to him once the school starts. So
yes.
what if I start mandala art for him so that there'll be not too much instructions, only like silence will be there and then just painting will be there, coloring will be there.
That's
So I
actually,
want it.
yeah, that's actually a great point. I think Gitanjali also mentioned that she will take one calming activity. So one of the things to think about is to take a calming activity. And mandala is very much there in our daily rhythms because, as you said, the same thing, because the auditory input overwhelms Anand. And we are actually very interesting discoveries we are making. So when he's extremely tired, he doesn't even want to listen to chants, which he finds really regulating. So when he's extremely tired, he'll say, no, no, no chants. But he's willing to do mandala. So I've now started teaching him that, look, you have a level of fatigue scale, because if you don't even want to listen to the chant, you're really tired. When he bounced back a little bit, he's now willing to listen to chant. Today he was very tired because we had the Graha Pravesam and we had all these things going on, and he was very tired. So we started the practice today morning, and after a minute he didn't feel like dancing. So I said, Anand, let's try singing, and he sang just fine. we sang and did the movement. So I said, Anant, you're not that tired, because when you're that tired, you don't even want to listen to music, right? But you are okay singing and doing the movement. So then we sang the dance that he's doing um, for the presentation on 29th. We just sat and did it. So I think as when you really do it in a very mindful way, you are able to first of all discover what is happening and what's not happening. And then the child also can learn, oh, when I'm really tired, this is what I can do. When I'm a little less tired, this is what I can do. Ultimately, I think that's what we want, because we want them to be in tune with themselves and know what they need to do, right? So it's very important, I think. And Muthukumari, coming to the point of not just keeping on repeating, I think one of the very important reasons for repetition is also that when you have that predictable structure, the activation goes low, right? Because so that common thing could Muthukumari could just be at a particular time after he comes back from school, you do the mandala, right? But the mandala is going to be different each day. You can do it a little bit differently too in terms of how you coordinate. But I think a certain amount of consistency and predictability should be there, because then I think it's really regulating for the brain to experience that predictability. And then you start enjoying the variations that you draw. So if you start the mandala, what I would suggest is take simple patterns and maybe keep it very simple, because if you take only one color for me and one color for you, you have a little bit more of a chance to establish that back and forth, right? To do the turn taking. And you don't have to talk, right? You can just take one pencil and you color and then look at him. And now he knows it's his turn to color. So we don't have to use words at all. It can be totally non-verbal, right? But only when you do the pattern does he start recognizing that there's a back and forth here. Amma will do something, I'll do something. Amma will do something, I'll do something. That back and forth is often what is very difficult for our children. So I think that's why that predictable pattern is very important. So see how you can do it, and how much variation each person can take is going to depend. Some children may not have that much of an issue with variations. A lot of our children do have difficulty with variations, but even if they're okay with variations, I think it is still helpful to introduce those variations in a systematic and regular way, because then they feel it as a regulatory pattern. We have a pattern going, slight variation, pattern going, slight variation. So Neetu, I think this is what might help you also, as you're working with Karna, because
Yeah.
they may be anxious and resisting because they don't feel that safeness, that safety, right? And when you have a
Yeah.
regulatory pattern, you get that safety. So we have
Yeah.
done that regulatory pattern in a lot of different ways. We would actually do like a circuit, which is also good for attention. So we'd have different things around a room. So we might have a place where there's a little painting, a place where we had bean bags to throw and catch. Another place is a ball. So we would just go around this veranda 5 minutes. So that may be another thing that might work with Ritesh, because if he doesn't want to do just the same thing, we used to go to one place, play with bean bags for a minute or two, then go to another place where we maybe have a sandbox, then go to a third place and do something else. So that keeps it moving, but at the same time, there's that predictable flow. And in that flow, you can slowly bring in variations. So there are a lot of different ways you can do this, but the two big variables, so that is our, if you unfold all this, the first fold that we start with is predictable part, regulating part, and the variations. How exactly you play with that, you discover. Okay. Yeah. And as you said, the daily chores are great.
Ma'am,
Yeah. Go ahead,
ma'am,
Muthukumar.
actually, when a person is going from one place to another place in a vehicle, okay, he's driving a scooter and going to one place, same place he's going every day. Okay, so we know the route. Okay, so when you keep on going the same route every day, our mind knows the route. But so even though our mind will be thinking some other activity, still we take that route and go and reach.
Yes.
So our mind is not, so we are not, our mind is not focused there. It's not mindful. Okay, similarly, this same concept will apply to these children also. Then you keep on doing the same thing for a 1 month. Okay, so they will learn, they will start doing, but they're not doing mindful, right? Because they know automatically comes from their mind, the gestures they do. Okay, but they are not mindful, right, ma'am?
But that's
Is
exactly
it
the
correct?
example I gave you with the walk. That when you're doing the walk, few days at least you get the same pattern, because first the pattern has to be established. But we already had a pattern. We were walking for a long time before we even started RTA. Now we start introducing variation slowly, but I do it very gradually, because we are walking and I suddenly stop. That's all I did. Nothing great, right? We are going on the same old walk we have done, but I've suddenly stopped. And you're exactly right. Now that mindfulness comes in, because otherwise we'll be just doing the same thing every day. But the variation is what is going to bring that mindfulness. It's going to shift the presence, both the guide presence and the child presence, because I was walking and now I've done nothing. I've just stopped, right? And it gives him time to pay attention to me. And it's only that one thing. Again, I walk a little bit, again, I stop. Again, I walk a little bit, again, I've stopped. So even though it is still just one stop, he has to be mindful, because I could suddenly stop. Now he knows that he has to be a little bit more alert, because I don't know when Amma is going to stop. Right? So just that small change can introduce mindfulness. All I'm doing is stopping, nothing else. Right? But he doesn't know when I'm going to stop. So I walk a little bit, stop, walk a little bit, stop, So there is even predictability in the variation, right? Because he knows that somewhere I'm going to stop. Now it becomes a game, right? So I'm like, I could even, look at him and stop. That could be another, anticipatory thing. So, before I'm going to stop, I'm going to look at him and say, and then stop, right? And then we'll introduce other things. I'll suddenly start walking very fast or very slow. But these variations are introduced gradually. I'm not going to do stopping, walking fast, walking slow, walking backwards, hopping. All of them I'm not going to do on the same day, right? So I'm going to do it very, very gradually, right? But now what has happened, he already knows that Amma's safe. She's going to do something predictable with me, because the brain thrives on safety and predictability. They need that too. So he knows I'm not going to do anything very random, but a little bit I'm willing to, right? And so he also knows that mindfulness is done in very small increments. So that is why I'm even advising, if you're doing mandala, don't keep like 50 pencils in front of you, right? Just take one and one. I color with one, you color with one. I color with one, you color with one. My grandson picked up quickly. Very within a few minutes, he took out two more pencils and said, Amma, you keep, Party, you keep two, I'll keep two. Fine. If he initiates that, great, we'll go with that, right? But clearly he's understood the pattern, that he has one, I have one, and we take turns. But you see what is happening is, with that predictability, that social interaction is happening. Because if you're doing very chaotic, he is not understanding what he's expected to do. But now they understand, oh, I'll color one, my parent or somebody will color one, right? So it has become a social activity. No words needed. You can be completely silent, right? But that is the essence of co-regulation. That is, you're doing it together, right? So do it together, and believe me, it will not be boring. When they say boring, a lot of times it can mean different things. Once they get this dance of predictability and variation, they will be grounded. So Anand's been learning with Ujjwal now for, I see that Ujjwal's here. So he has been learning for 3 years. The basic flow is the same, right? I mean, there's we start with a slow cut, just get there. So the basic pattern is the same, right? So summing up, I think Anant is here. I want to say a few words about the folding, and then we're almost running out of time also. So let me just finish this. So the takeaway from today. So Anand's been folding for a lot of, Anand, can you do the first fold? So that first fold is where we start, okay? And here, when you think about ideas, the starting point I'm giving you for the next month is when you fold, and can fold and open and throw. Just do a quick. Perfect. So when you model with boxes and arrows, you don't get that orderly progression. So if you, it's okay, just to show for a minute. Then you can. So if you take this with the first fold, one side, predictable patterns, other side, variations. So for the whole of the next month, I want you to, the guides to meditate on predictable patterns and variations. That's going to play out at different levels, right? It could play out at the level of one activity. It plays out at the level of one lesson, where, for example, in Anand's class with Ujjwal, he'll have, the sloka first, then the dance, then the singing, then the chanting, whatever it is. And you have the same thing in the race class. So there's that predictable pattern with variations, across a lesson. It can be a day, right? So I'll come back to the folding. Folding is actually an excellent activity, and we'll talk more about this. Anand never really did origami, but he loves this because it's again that predictability. We always start with the first fold, do the next 3 folds, go to a tetrahedron, and then it keeps expanding from there. So whole movement is actually a very good combination of predictability and variation, predictability and variation, predictability and variation. That's great. We learned grammar that way with Shirley grammar. Again, predictability and variation. Okay, just can show. So this is the next fold. When you divide it into, fold it over, and then you divide into the 6. That's what he's working on. So when you do the folding, one thing is you have a starting point. So the starting point is, I want you to think of predictable patterns and variation. So that is your task. And then when we do a whole bunch of other folds, and I'll explain all this more in the ebook, but what we end up with is, this is the final thing. Peace at the base, which when you open in this form, peace is the center. One side daily rhythms, one side family fun and learning. And the family fun and learning, there's a lot of that, unpredictables, all that part is there. The daily rhythms are more the predictable part. And then the joyful investigation. So that's kind of where I want to leave this discussion, because choose one joyful investigation for the next month. You may vary and so on, but at least try to come up with something. Like you said, you'd say, okay, we'll do mandala. And try to be specific in terms of the predictable pattern and the variation. So you might write something like, okay, we are going to, for example, since you mentioned folding, you might say, we are going to start folding next month. The activity is folding, and you might start first. Okay, just 1 minute. Can you open that, Anand? So maybe for, depends on the child. Maybe for some child, maybe just the first division into 6. That may take a week. It takes time. It's not easy. Even the mandala teacher was saying, it looks, you do like this, but to get a precise fold takes time. And it's very good for the hands, for the writing and so on. Folding, coloring, all of these are great, right? And I see Monica's also there. So I just also wanted to, since we're almost out of time, want to say thank you to all the parents for being here. I think we've made a big transition from lots of ideas to a very structured, let's do this. Invite you all to join for some investigation. After the session, if you can share one activity that you would like to do. Think about a predictable pattern there, and think about a variation you might introduce. And then think about how you will work on the piece. How does it, because when you have that structure and the variations, it really has an impact, first of all, on the activation, because you have that flow, you keep the activation low. So Monica, Manju, all of you are here. And I don't know if we have a minute, if you can just quickly share something about your journey so far with peace. I'd love to hear that. I don't know whether we have enough time, but at least if 1 or 2 of you can do that. Anyone has any thoughts? I know Monica was the first one who joined the board, signed on to the Lilo, and peace is really the evolution of that Lilo idea. So I'm happy, Monica, you could at least join us for a few minutes. And Ujjwal, I don't know if he's in a position to speak. If he can, maybe he can talk to us for a minute. Okay, Prabhu.
Good morning, everyone. I'm listening to the conversation. Very beautiful. I think where we have. I mean, the Ramaji keeps telling the acronym PEACE is very very beautiful. And I was just wondering that we should. Peace is our own true nature. So we have different ways of getting back to that. And I think not only for the child but also for the parents, we all have to get back to the peace. I think this methodology, the approach that we have come up to. It's a nice way of getting back to our own true nature. And also, I mean, as Ramaji mentions it in RDI, it is called the co-regulation. So we should find ways of co-regulating. And also, in the course of time, the children will be able to learn how to self-regulate. I think that's the crux of this